Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to a Time for Truth show. I'm very pleased to have you back again with us. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff. And today we're going to be covering leaks, a leaky roof, a leaky business. Neither one of them is something we want to experience because it's not what we want to have happen. And so today I want to actually have and introduce on our show a special guest that comes to us. His name is Mr. John Chan. And Buddha, if you can put his photos up on the screen, and we will introduce him to our viewers. Mr. Chan is owner of Durable Slate and Durable Restoration Company, and is a UCLA graduate. His roofing company has international acclaim as award-winning contractors with excellence in craftsmanship. Mr. Chan is a 5-time winner of the National Roofing Contractors Association Gold Circle Award for Project of the Year. He's winner of the Better Business Bureau's International Award for Marketplace Ethics. Ethics, something that's so missing in today's world. He's the winner of the Wise Member of the Year and Wise International Leadership Award. He runs the only American company to ever win the International Project of the Year from the International Federation of Roofing Contractors. He is an international speaker on sales, communications, administration, organization, strategic planning, historic roofing, copper roofing, historic restoration. And, you know, I have to cut it off because otherwise we go on and on and on. He's been a keynote speaker at the International Slate Conference in Madrid, an international speaker on business affluence attainment in Aruba. He's a speaker on slate and sheet metal roofing, and he did this in Lima, Peru. He's a consultant on historic restoration projects around the world, including the Red House, House of Parliament in Trinidad. John is a global humanitarian, having volunteered at disaster sites all over the world and donating his time and his money to activities to help mankind, such as Drug-Free World Education, The Way to Happiness Common Sense Guide, and also to many churches around the world. Mr. Chan is on the board of directors of Knocking on a Life Worth Saving, the board of directors of the National Slate Association. He was past president and chairman of the Wise Business Charter Committees in Cincinnati, Washington, D.C., and Louisiana. And the truth is, I could go on and on and on, but we need to use the rest of the time for our show. And I'm sure John will excuse me if we stop here, and we welcome him onto a Time for Truth show. Mr. John Chan. Welcome, John.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's my pleasure. You know, I had to cut out a lot of your CV because otherwise we would never get to the show tonight. So, but I wanted to ask you because you're really unbelievably prolific and affluent and productive. So how did you decide to take on roofing as your career?
Well, it was actually kind of interesting. It was a summer job for me when I was going to school at UCLA. So I lived in Ohio and I would go home during the summers, and I found it was a very interesting summer job. And basically, I could stay in shape and get a nice tan and work out while I was roofing. And what I realized was working on all these historic homes and projects, I was fascinated by how we could restore these beautiful landmarks back to their old original grandeur from being run down and dated. So it was really fascinating to me.
Well,
So
you know what?
yeah,
It sounds like you picked something very, very complete. You know, maybe I'm going to switch my profession, because I tell you what, you get to exercise, you get out in the sun, and you create something with your hands, or you restore it. That's a beautiful thing. You know, I know that because my wife also is an art restorer, and I know the joy that she gets out of restoring something to its original beauty and luster. I want to ask you
yeah.
something. So, you know, because we have you on the show, and I know I've encountered roofing problems. Actually, a few roofing problems. They were very exasperating, because one time I thought I had it done. Next thing I know, a few weeks later, it leaked through the paint that I had just finished doing on a roof in one of the rooms that the leak was in. So we repaired it again, and the same thing happened a few months later. So what I wanted to ask you, and I'm sure our viewers are very interested in, what are the important facts that our homeowners should know regarding roofing?
Well, the big thing is that a roof is pretty much the most important aspect of your house because it protects your entire property. So a small leak that goes undetected can be disastrous, because what can happen is that it can cause mold, it can cause rotten wood, it can trickle down walls, and it can go all the way down your basement. And you don't see anything because it's going in between the walls, and then you have a musty leak in the basement, and you're like, huh, does my basement leak? But it's actually the roof. So a lot of people don't understand that the roof is super important, and even though you don't see it, it's not like your appliances in your kitchen. It's vital to your house, and it shouldn't be overlooked.
Makes total sense to me. I've experienced it, so I wholeheartedly agree. Now, what can someone do? Because someone like me, I had no clue that anything was wrong, and it just happened. So is there anything that someone can do, or what do you suggest on that?
Yeah, so basically, there's a few things you can do. Number one is, get up in your attic and take a flashlight around, see if you see any mold or anything that looks wet or used to be wet, and feel it. See if there's any kind of moisture, any kind of mustiness, and then if there is, you can go outside, take a look at it. If you set up a ladder, take a look at it, or call a roofer and ask them to look at it. Look at the roof, look at the gutters, look at the siding or the windows. That's kind of the interesting thing, because sometimes I get called out and I'll find the strangest leaks. I just found one where they thought it was the roof, and I was just like, huh, well, let's take a look at it. It was a leak in the siding, and the guy was just like, wow. He's like, I had all these different contractors out here looking at the windows and the siding. You're the first one to figure it out. And I said, yeah. I said, well, we get on a lot of really complex roofs. I mean, some of the roofs that we work on are pre-revolutionary homes. Some of them are churches that are 200 feet tall, and we work on really, really different types of buildings. So I've seen a lot of different situations, different scenarios where I can observe something and find out where it's coming from.
Well, thank you for giving those clues, and on what to do. And so now, the other question I'm sure our viewers have is, here they have a roof problem, or let's say that the roof needs to be replaced. So regarding shopping or pricing or getting estimates, what should someone know or look out for when they're doing that for their home?
Well, you want to make sure that you get a qualified contractor for your roof, okay? And it might take a little bit of homework. And what I mean by that is that a lot of contractors use subcontractors. And that means that your roof is only as good as that subcontractor. So somebody might be able to give you all these references, but who did the job? Okay? So, that's one of the things I say, because we pretty much don't use contractors or subcontractors. We do all of our own work. And there's nothing wrong with using subcontractors if you ensure that they're only the best ones, and you oversee all of their work and you inspect all of their work. So one of the things that we do is we organize our company in a certain way where there's a whole division called quality control that inspects every single job and also certifies all of our employees in their jobs. So the treasurer is certified, the estimator is certified, a person putting on a roof is certified. So if that person ever makes a mistake, he's sent back to quality control to find out what word he didn't understand or what concept he didn't understand, so that they don't continually have those problems. And also, that quality control division goes out and inspects every single job to make sure that nothing got bypassed. There wasn't anything that got cut, cornered, or anything like that. And that's something that I find that's missing in a lot of companies. They don't inspect all of their work to make sure it's just perfect. And so in searching out a contractor, you want to make sure that whoever is doing the work is A, qualified, B, can do it, and C, will do it to exact specifications.
Makes a lot of sense. You brought out something very interesting that I'd like you to expand on, because I see the tremendous success. I mean, I was reading these awards that you've received, and some of the jobs, I've seen some of the jobs that you've done, which are amazing, in some really old buildings with tremendous architecture in different countries, and challenges from heights and slopes of these roofs. And so what I wanted to ask you, though, because those are things that we all encounter, but so what is it that you've been doing? What is it that you're applying? You gave a little bit of this idea to have such huge success with your company.
Well, one of the things that we do is we use Hubbard administrative technology. Mr. L. Ron Hubbard is a philosopher, and he introduces administrative technology that works wonders. And I get questions all of the time from other roofing contractors. Oh my gosh, how would you even do a job like that? Some of the jobs we've done are breathtaking to a lot of people. Like we did a job at St. Andrew's Church in Roanoke, where the twin steeples, and termites had gotten in there, and all of a sudden the steeples that were 175 feet tall started leaning. And so when the church called up different roofing contractors, they looked at it like, we can't get up there, it's too dangerous. So they called a general contractor, actually a couple of them. They said, okay, well, how do we get this safe so that a roofing contractor can get up there? And they said, well, that's a slate roof on top of that steeple. It's like, if we try and set something up, those slates can fall. So we really don't know how you would do that. And so what we did was we erected scaffold all the way around, and we actually cut the steeples off. We took them down, and we fixed all of the masonry that was deteriorated around both steeples. And while we were doing that, we dropped in steel I-beams and secured it to the inside while new steeples were being built out of structural steel. And once they arrived, we clad them with wood and we craned them back into place and anchored them. And then we put all of the slate and all the decorative copper back on. And people look at us like, where would you even start? And I said, well, that's the interesting thing. I said, a person really is as successful as they understand what's in front of them and can apply the correct technology to it. And I said, if you understand roofing, a lot of times it'll take you to the underside, the structure. So if you understand the structure, then you understand what's happened. Basically, those termites have eaten the wood and they're leaning. So the wood is in bad shape. So these steeples that sit 175 feet tall,
Amazing.
you've got several factors. The church sits on a hill, so you've got an incredible amount of wind. The copper up there, it expands and contracts. See, that's one of the things that you have to understand with different types of materials. They react differently in different environments. So when copper gets hot, it expands. When it gets cool, it shrinks. So when it does that, all of those solder joints in the copper tend to tear. And when it tears, it allows water inside. When water gets in, it gets the wood wet. When the wood gets wet, that attracts termites. And then that, it multiplies. So the whole thing of fixing something that complicated is to go back with something, that won't move. So we use that structural steel. And then we changed the copper, meaning that the copper originally was something, what they call 20 ounce. 20 ounce copper means that for every square foot, it weighs 20 ounces. So just over a pound, or about a pound and a quarter per square foot. And so it's pretty thin. So the copper that we went back with is slightly thicker than 40 ounce, which is more than double the thickness. And then we didn't solder it, we welded it. So it was super strong, and the steeple didn't move as much because of all that structural steel. So now, instead of tearing apart, it's extremely stable. And so that goes to what I was saying earlier about understanding concepts and words within your industry. So if you're doing roofing, you have to know a little bit about the structure. So, and if in doing copper work, you have to understand a little bit about expansion, contraction, dissimilar metals. That was another thing, because, you can't have that steel touch the copper. So within the top there, we made all of that stainless. So there's no galvanic reaction. So basically what happens is, if copper and steel touch and it gets moist, even the small amount of water that's in the air, it disintegrates the steel. Wow. So if you get that steel to disintegrate, then over time, it's going to rust and oxidize and fall apart. So in doing a project like that, you have to know roofing, you have to know structural work, you have to know basically the galvanic reactions of different metals. You have to understand how different metals react in changes in temperature. So when it gets hot, when it gets cold, how much does it move? Because that's critical. If you don't know how much metal moves, you're going to install pieces of metal that are going to heat up and expand and rip apart if they're not allowed to move. So I know that was a really big project to talk about, but what I wanted to basically say is that you had to understand the different aspects and understand each aspect well so that you can end up with a great product. And one of the things that I always say is that if you're ever having difficulty in any aspect of your life, it's probably because there's some word or words or concepts about that subject that you don't fully understand. Because if you fully understand it, you'll figure it out. You'll look at it and you'll go, okay, well, if it's like this, then it's like this. If it goes this way, then it's going to move that way. And anything that you do in life, whether it's work on cars, work on people's teeth, work on broken bones, work on someone's eyes, or work on someone's house, it doesn't matter what it is that you do. If you fully understand the words and the concepts, you can't really go wrong. You'll figure it out.
That's totally amazing. And so I see how you're applying that in your business. It makes a lot of sense to me. So this then is part of what you were talking about with the Hubbard administrative technology. Is that what you're talking about?
That's correct. Mr. Hubbard laid out a certain way to organize any organization, any company to succeed well. And one of the basics is that a lot of people are unable to study and grasp their subject really well. And so anytime you grasp your subject really well, you'll really skyrocket to the top of that profession. So I always give like a tip as to if anybody's ever having a problem, I say, well, just go back, find out what word or words that you don't fully understand within your subject, and you can just do great because you'll understand all the things that others don't, and you'll be able to fix the strangest problems. People ask us how we get some of these projects. They're like, how do you get all these projects? It's like you guys do one amazing project after another, after another, after another. I said, people call on us, They're like, well, like, how do you get a job in Lima, Peru, or the Trinidad? The House of Parliament. Do you advertise there? I said, of course not. We don't advertise out there. But if you get so good at your profession, whenever there's a really, really difficult project, they'll find you. They'll search the internet. They'll start calling people. Hey, I've got this issue. Who do I talk to? And the strange thing of it is people ask us like, well, how do you bid something like that? And how do you be competitive? And I said, well, I'm like, I don't really actually try and be competitive with anybody. I basically state what we're going to do and how much it's going to cost, and then they can use us or not. And I don't actually care what somebody else's bid is. It can be 10 times more, 10 times less, or half, or the same. It's irrelevant, because I'm giving the price to do what we're going to do. And that's the only thing that really matters to me. And what somebody else prices it at is irrelevant. And the funny thing is, a lot of these difficult projects, we're the only bid. Because most people look at it and go, I wouldn't know how to do this. And I remember I was talking to this one customer. I said, hey, so how did you get our name? And he says, here's the funny thing. He's like, so I called one of your competitors. He's local here because, this was an out-of-state project for us. And I asked him if he could do the job. And he said, yeah, of course. So I sent him the blueprints, and I got no response. So I called him up and said, hey, you get my blueprints, and can you price it out for me? And he kept hem-hawing. And he said, look, can you do the job or not? And he said, well, I probably, he was just really hum-hum. He goes, this is kind of like a durable job. And he goes, what do you mean it's a durable job? He goes, this is a really difficult project. It's like a project that there's a company called Durable Slate. They do projects like this. It's extremely difficult. And he goes, well, you're saying you can't do it then? He goes, not really. Not really. It's just too complicated. And so he said, I called another company, also local, and I sent him the plans. He said almost the exact same thing. He said, well, he's like, this is a really tough job. He's like, this is like a durable job. He's like, a durable job. He goes, yeah, there's a company called Durable Slate. They do these kind of difficult jobs. It's like, this isn't a straightforward job. He's like, it's not that we can't do something like this, but we don't even have the manpower. He goes, it would take my best guy to do almost all of the detail work here, and we'd be on the project for like 8 years. And the guy started laughing. He goes, 8 years? He goes, yeah. He goes, you got a really difficult project. You need a company that really knows what they're doing. It's like, try calling Durable Slate. And he's like, so he said, I looked you guys up online, but you guys are all the way out in Ohio, so I thought I'd try something not so far. Called another guy, and he said the exact same thing. Is forget it. I'm just gonna call Durable Slate because it's obviously their kind of work. So that's how he got our name. It was from 3 of our competitors.
Well, you know what? It's amazing and it's beautiful that you have the respect of your peers, your fellow professionals. That's saying a tremendous amount about you. There's so much more. Unfortunately, we've run out of time on the show. But, I found it very interesting, and I'm sure it's been very helpful to a lot of those people out there, especially with the concept that you gave from Mr. Hubbard about getting competency and clearing up confusions by clearing up the words in the subject. I'm going to go back and do that myself with my own profession. And, unfortunately, we're going to have to continue another day, but I wanted to thank you for being on the show, John.
Well, thanks for having me. It was great being here.
Well, you know what? Definitely a lot of good points. And I want to also just actually acknowledge you because we didn't get to it today, but I see how much you've done to help your fellow man, aside from what you're doing with these roofs, that somehow with your family, with your wife, and with a tremendous roofing company that I know is taking a lot of time, and you somehow make time to actually help humanity. So you're some kind of role model. I really want to acknowledge you. And it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. And for those of you watching, may you apply this technology. May you never also have another roof leak. If you do, I guess you call durable, right? And if you have something that you're not quite getting in your profession, you can take a look at what Mr. Hubbard said with study and clear that up. And may you be much wiser and a much happier person from here on out. So thank you for tuning in. And we will see you again on our next episode of A Time for Truth show. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet